Just to confuse everyone, we've swapped places, so...
I gotcha. I'm Chris Thame, the lead engineer at Wireless Group.
And I'm Nick Prater. I'm head of broadcast technology for Wireless. What follows is the story of how we moved 6 national radio stations from one building to another. And I hope along the way you'll get to see some of the pictures of where we are. You'll hope to understand some of the challenges we faced and the solutions we found. And I hope, because today is all about exchanging ideas and about asking questions, I hope there's something for us to discuss in the pub a little bit later, which is where I'll be going after this. After the free drink here and then maybe a few drinks, I'll definitely be in the pub. Now, I wonder, how much does anyone here know about wireless? Few faces and a few hands. Who knows the radio stations that we moved into that building? There's a slight clue here, but that's not all of them. Any suggestions? What are the radio stations? Someone shout out some stations.
Talk radio.
Yes.
Any others?
Virgin Anthems.
Yes.
Very good. Very good.
That's 2 that aren't on the list. There's TalkSport 2. There's Talk Radio. How many are we up to now?
There's a few more to go, yeah, isn't there? We've also got recently we moved some Scottish Sun stations in as well. They're hosted there and they come from there, but they're broadcast in Scotland. So it's getting quite full, but it's okay so far.
Indeed, the Scottish Sun stations broadcasting from London Bridge, Scottish Sun 80s, Scottish Sun Hits, and Scottish Sun Greatest Hits. So this is the story of how we moved those stations, and to give you a little flavour of how we did that, have a look at this video. So that's the short version of how we moved TalkSport. There were a few more wrinkles in the story than that video shows, and we'll touch on some of those and also show some photographs of what we've done. And in a moment, you will see a picture of the news building where we've moved to. But I think it's first worth taking a moment to think about where we came from. And we came from a building on the South Bank. We came from 18 Hatfields, which is TalkSport Towers, as it was known. And that had a lot of technology, even up until earlier this year, a lot of the original technology that was installed in the year 2000. I was actually part of the team that moved the radio station into that building. And so it was Klotz Vardis desks, for those of you familiar with that technology. It was IPX networking. The desks were running Windows 3.1. A lot of old technology that I have to say was still working. It was still in use. Virgin Radio moved in about 3 years ago to that building. Neil Sedley, who's here at the moment, he did a talk at TechCon at the time about how that station was created at Hatfields. That was using more up-to-date technology. That was using the Zeta playout system. It was using the desks Axios system there. So that was quite similar to what they ended up using when we moved to the new building. So as an engineer working in that building, it was very self-contained. We were quite a self-sufficient bunch there. So most things were an engineering problem. So if there was a power problem, engineering. If there was an aircon problem, engineering. If there were mice running around reception, engineering problem. Toilet blocked, who are you going to call? Engineering. Occasionally, we even got involved with fixing studio problems, but we had a lot of control over what was done there. Now, News UK bought Wireless Group in 2016, and they are a much larger organization. The building that you see there, there's about 4,000 people working in that building, significantly larger organization. There's people to do things, and that brings its own challenges as well. I actually counted how far it is from the engineering office on level 8 up to the TalkSport studios, which are on level 17. And there are 198 steps to climb. And I sometimes do climb them because it can be busy waiting for a lift. And I still find after 198 steps that I'm out of breath at the top. And I still hope that one day I'll get to the top of those stairs and not be completely out of breath. But, you know, keep working on that.
Yeah.
So there's a facilities team that deliver projects such as a new studio, such as a new racks room. And this wasn't a completely fresh design because we have radio stations in Ireland as well. We have 6 radio stations in the Republic of Ireland. And in Northern Ireland, in Belfast, we have U105. And U105 relocated a couple of years back. So that was somewhere to test the design patterns that went into this building, to test the technology, to build the relationships with the suppliers. And a lot of the designs developed in that ended up being what we have here at the news building. Now, while all this is going on, I was keeping Hatfields going. I was there as studios were being dismantled, trying to keep radio stations on air, trying to keep people happy. We started off with a great plan. The plan was to move Talk Radio first into here, then Virgin Radio, then the other stations. And for Virgin Radio, we were planning 2 beautiful self-op studios. It was just Sam and Amy doing breakfast, a double-headed show. Then someone had the bright idea to hire Chris Evans, and that changed everything about the plan. So picture the scene. I'm back at Hatfields trying to keep that going, but it's Chris here who is at the news building trying to test and commission new radio stations and move our stations in. So I'll let him pick up the story now.
Thank you very much. So I thought I'd start here in our CTA. We're using very different systems, so I'll run through what we're using there. I'd like to point out as well, this is actually taken last week, so it really is that clean still. I didn't clean up.
Just.
It is, I promise. We've got 5 rows of racks in total. And there's still a bit of room left in them, which, considering we've actually got 5 more stations here than we had on the spec, is quite lucky. There's a few spaces left. Here's a closer look at some of the racks here. So on the left rack, we've got some black Omnia Volt audio processors. We've got 7 physical processors in the building. I say physical because we've also got 5 software encoders and processors as well. We've got a couple of PDMs, profanity delays below them, and a couple of Zipstream R2 encoders for sending our stations out to our CDN. In the rack on the right there, we've got a lot of our Axia X nodes. This rack in particular is the final hop from us to Arqiva for AM, DAB, and DTT. The building is entirely IP-based from everything, all the floors, top to bottom, and we are Telos for a lot of it. We've got the Fusion desks, we've got the profanity delays to the audio processors, the routers, to the X nodes that feed the transmission, all Telos. This is a finished control room. This is TalkSport, or 17F to be precise. You can see there we've got the Axia Fusion desks. Above there we've got RCS Zeta, our playout system. We've got the console there in the middle. Above the right console, we've got Burley, our newsroom system, and on the right we've got Phonebox. We've always used Phonebox for our TBUs and for our socials more recently, but here we're also using it for our outside source and codec routing. A producer can quickly jump on, dial an ICN number, and just drag it down to one of the 16 outside source faders that this studio has. Here's a finished studio. We've got TalkSport 2 here, 17D. You'll see a little Axia console at the bottom there, because TalkSport 2 do quite a lot of self-opping. They have tech ops on the other side, but they do quite a lot of it themselves as well. It's worth mentioning, when this was designed, it was kept in mind that you could do any studio, could you do any radio station with relative ease. They'd see familiar buttons, a couple of presses, and the branding would change, the colours would change. In theory, you could put Virgin in this studio and vice versa. Thankfully, it hasn't come to that yet. But before they were built, there was a lot of work to do. They were just empty offices. There was not a lot going on there at all. So as you can see through these, it really was from the ground up. Here, this is the factory at IPE, where they built everything there before it came over here, and it was the job of us to go over there and make sure that everything was okay, make sure it would fit, we're not missing anything obvious. You can also see the CTA racks at the back. This is actually the desk in 17F TalkSport. So that was the building. That's how it works, how it's planned out. As Nick said, the first one was going to be Talk Radio, and then we got the news that there was a bit of a schedule change for for Virgin. First, they were going to be on 17. The studios were built, the little self-op studios. They were lovely. They were spot on. They were all ready to go. And then we learnt about the schedule change. So what did we do? We bulldozed one of them, stuck a studio on the side of it, and started again. But this was about 2 months before they were supposed to go on air. So we quickly realised it wasn't going to work. And when Talk Radio weren't looking, we nipped downstairs, changed the branding, and took over some of their studios.
That went down really well, you can imagine.
Really did.
Really went down well.
This is the temporary control room that Virgin would be using. This is 14D. You can see there's still quite a lot to be done there. This is about a month or so before the launch, so it was getting a bit stressful, and the studio wasn't looking much better. This here is the self-op studio across the hall. This is where the daytime Virgin shows would come from. There's Mr. Mike Cass, now head of Virgin, just checking the logs and making sure we haven't left any holes. Picture this. It's the day before the launch, the day before the first live show. We've got Hatfields on a fader. We connected the two sites via some Comrex we'd put in weeks before. We could hear Hatfields. Arkiva could hear us. It's not looking too bad at all. We were waiting for Hatfields to go into automation from their live programming. And once that happened, we had an engineer there. I was at TNB. Arkiva on the phone, and we had a nervous director pacing the floor with a DAB radio glued to his ear. I gave Arkiva the go-ahead, and for the first time, news was live. The building was live. We were making real radio. We then stuck a stop in the log at Hatfields. We were ready on the go button at TNB. We flipped the faders, and that was it. The DAB was over. We'd switched. We hadn't done online yet. We were still feeding that from Hatfields on a backfeed from TNB. So I instructed the engineer there to drop the mounts. I connected them, and Virgin was officially coming from TNB for the first time, one station down. Now that was the self-op studio. That was one thing, and it was working okay. The Evans effort was a lot trickier. It's a very complicated show. There's a lot of logic. There's a lot of workflow, and he was trying to do things that we just hadn't done before, which I'll go on to later on. This is the control room. A couple of days before the launch, I think it's looking a lot better than it was before, but we've still got mic preamps on the deck, there's wires everywhere. I think I'm trying to fix a KVM there that's just not playing ball. So there was still work to be done. The studio was looking better. We've got some massive monitors on the deck there because Evans really likes it loud. So the Genelecs up the top have been unplugged. We've since got him back onto some Genelecs, which are a bit easier on the eye. On the left console there, above there, you'll see RCS Zeta, which we had to change quite a lot for this instance for his hotkeys. He loves playing his hotkeys. If you listen to the show, you'll understand he loves playing hotkeys. With this, he can quickly drag down, and he can fire up to 4 hotkeys at any time by hitting the on buttons on the Axia console. So things were ready. Chris was relatively happy. Everyone was nervous, but the first show went live on the 21st of January, and the show was started off with Richard Ashcroft playing one of his best-known tunes. There we go. That was a really exciting day. Everyone was really tired, but it was awesome. This picture here is of one of the galleries that we have in the building. We're lucky to have a couple of TV studios. Now that Chris is in the 17th floor studio, we mix all of the band sessions live from the gallery downstairs. They've got control of the 7 cameras that are in the studio. It makes for quite a crisp, smooth production. So we were claiming squatters' rights on 14th floor. Talk Radio were knocking quite loudly at this point, so we had to get the proper studios ready. This was 17A. You can see there's a couple of holes in the desk there for the 2 Axia consoles. We eventually went for one massive one, which you can see here. I took these last week, so it is that tidy. On the left there, you've got a Yamaha QL1. This is used for the band sessions. It's connected to a studio I/O rack via Dante. And in the picture here, this is the back of the control room. So this for the phone ops, the assistant producers. There's also 2 desks outside the window as well. It really is it's a hectic show, isn't it? It's nuts, but it's great fun to watch. This is the studio. This is the view from the back of it. The door at the end there to the right is where the bands normally stand. There's a wall of cameras behind it, and all the guests sit around the desk there. And this is from the other side of the room. The Divergent Star at the back there is a fully customizable screen. And a recent fun thing we did with it is Chris wanted to present his show from Portugal. He'd found out about Comrexes, and he wanted to do a show from anywhere he could, which is great. But we still wanted to get out the social media. They do a lot of video turnaround, and they need to keep that up for various reasons. So we had an idea. We'd give him a webcam, and we'd send him a video feed of the studio back here, so we could have guests in the studio, and they could see him, he could see them. And we also tied it into our studio camera routing system, Virtual Director. So when there was audio coming down the Comrex, it switched to the Portugal feed. So it made the full feature as if he was there. But it's been a crazy ride. It's been good fun. This was the story of Virgin. The other ones that followed were a similar kind of procedure. TalkSport had a lot of different complications due to DCMF signalling we use for partners, which I'm sure Nick could tell any of you about for hours in the pub later on if you're
I think the key with TalkSport is it's been around for 20 years, and indeed, if you take part in the quiz later, you could be the proud owner of a 20 years of TalkSport book. It's a good read. But 20 years of legacy to move with TalkSport, so syndication partners, bizarre signalling systems that all had to be maintained through the move. So that made TalkSport challenging in a different way.
Absolutely. But it's been good fun, hasn't it? It's been all right. I think we've learned a lot from this. The systems we're using, we're still changing them every single week. We're using a lot of Pathfinder Core with these systems, and we're making changes left, right, and centre. We still have a lot of ideas. It's just finding the time. But for the moment, it's pretty stable, and everyone seems quite happy. It
is. I think there's 2 things I'd finish with, and one is to say it's the people that made this work, the people
Absolutely.
at TMB that we work with day in, day out, but also the suppliers, many of whom are here today. We couldn't have done that without strong relationships with the suppliers that are here. So thank you to everyone who helped us get this done.
Absolutely.
And the second thing is, if you want to come and have a look, please do get in touch. Be very happy to show you around and go for a pint afterwards. So please do get in touch if you're interested in seeing that in any more detail.
There we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.